Yo, today on the Independent Grind, we're gonna talk about being prepared when you enter the studio, when you go to the studio. Yeah, be right back. Yo, welcome to the Independent Grind, the show that gives inspiration and tips to creative minds and entrepreneurs through music and film. I am your host, Dramatik. Today, man, we're talking about being prepared when you go to the studio. If you're on a budget, let's say you got a project coming out, you got, let's say, $500, if you're gonna spend $1,000, $2,500, and you're trying to stick to that budget. One thing you're gonna do is try to keep that cost down low, is try to have everything prepared for you when you go to the studio, especially if you're paying $25, $40, $50 an hour or however much they charge. Now if you got your own studio and or you got a friend that's gonna record you for free, y'all just kicking back, chilling, that's no problem. You can take all day, you can sit there, listen to song, play around, joke. But when I go to a studio, I'm in beast mode. Right now I'm been recording myself for the past few years, but when I used to go to the studio and had to pay my hard-earned money, I used to have everything ready and prepared when I went to the studio, because I couldn't afford to waste money in the studio just because I was sitting there, didn't have songs prepared, didn't have my music prepared, didn't know what 12 bars or 16 bars was. All this type of stuff you need to know beforehand before you go to the studio to spend your hard-earned money. Now, I used to go to the studio when I first started recording, man. Before I started spending money, we used to do, like, back in the old school, we used to have a speaker set up and a little small radio with a tape player, and so the beat would be playing in the speaker, and we would just stand over when everybody turned to rap. We would just stand over the tape and rap to the record part of the tape. But that was we were young, 11, 12, 13 years old. We didn't know nothing about no studio. We just wanted to hear ourselves on tape. So that was one of the first times I heard myself on tape. And by the time I got in high school, my partner Mike, one of my producers, he had this recorder. And so he used to make beats, I used to make beats. And so we'll take our beats over to his house. He already was there. We'll take our beats and he used to record us. So to me, when he used to do that, that sounded a little bit better. And sometimes we would compare what we recorded to, like, the Hot Boys and No Limit. That's what was hot back then, the Hot Boys. So we were like, man, our stuff sound real good, but it's something we're not doing, because they stuff sounds fuller. But we didn't know about we recorded, mixed stuff, and got to go get it mastered and all that. We were just like, man, we sound good, we make good beats, we rap good. By itself, our stuff sound good, but when you start playing in the car, playing it on the home stereo and other stuff, you be like, man, my shit sounds different than Lil Wayne's, whatever the case may be, So eventually, right before we got out of high school, we started going to, like, a real studio. And what we would do is we would pay $25 an hour. We started paying money. We started paying $25 an hour to go to the studio. But one thing about it, we used to have our music already together. We had these beats. We'd go to Mike's house. We would walk over to his house. Me, him, and my partner Pilo. We would go walk to his house and we would practice our songs. We're like, here go the beat. Let's come up with some verses. We'll sit there, write verses, come up with songs. Or either if we don't finish that beat that day, we'll come back another day. But we always had ourselves prepared. So by the time we go to the studio and get an engineer the beat, we won't be wasting time, because, like I said, we're putting together money to pay for this stuff, and we didn't want to waste no money. We didn't want to waste our time. And that's something that you shouldn't take advantage of, in the studio, especially if you're on a budget. You need to have everything prepared. And after we went to that guy, he introduced me to somebody else. That studio was a little bit more expensive. It was $25 an hour. It was $25 an hour to go to this particular studio. No. It was $50 an hour to go to this studio. And so I definitely had to make sure everything was together. By then, I had started doing a lot of solo songs, and I was getting ready to drop my first project on the grind. And so when I went in the studio, man, I had to make sure I had everything together. This was back before we started tracking out beats. I used to make the beats on my keyboard, And so my keyboard would hold like 4, 5, 6 beats before you had to dump it off and start over. So how I used to make my tracks was I used to take the CD, I used to make the beat on the keyboard, and so it had to be just like I wanted it. And so I used to have a CD recorder. I hooked the keyboard to the CD recorder, record the beat off, and then I would have to erase it off my keyboard because I didn't really know about tracking beats out. And so I used to have all that prepared before I went to the studio. I knew what 16 bars were back then. 16 bars was the thing. Now most songs you hear on the radio is like 12 bars a verse. And I used to have all this stuff prepared because I was paying $50 an hour. The minimum was $100. Like I was saying, man, these young guys want everything handed to them for free. But I remember I used to have to go to the studio and pay. So every time I went to the studio, I was out of at least $100 because it was $50 an hour and his minimum was 2 hours. So if you had an hour worth of material, hour and 40 minutes, 45, sometimes they'll give you a little change back, but most times you had to be there them 2 hours. And so it got to a point where I started to have to track out my own beats because I felt I started learning that was the best way to do production. You can kind of control the music better when you track it out. Now back then, I used to, like I said, record it from a CD, from my keyboard to the CD. Then it came to the point where I had to track it out. This was like pre-2005. I didn't know nothing about the computer programs, the Cubase, and all this other stuff that people was using. I didn't know nothing about that. So what I would do, I would make beats on my keyboard. And like I said, it only held 4 to 6 beats. And I would have to dump it off. So I used to have to take the keyboard to the studio. Now when I took the keyboard to the studio, that was a lengthy process because it wasn't, but that was before I got into flash drives. It wasn't copy and paste. I used to have to make the drums out, the drum track. Then I had to make the snare track all the way to song 4 minutes, however long I wanted to go. Had to make the hi-hat tracks. You know, I had to make the piano part all the way through. Step program, and sometimes I played some of the stuff. Now when you go to the studio, when you're doing it that way, the same way I did it to make the track at home, I had to do it like that at the studio. So I would go to the studio with my keyboard, hook it up to his equipment because I didn't have none of this stuff at home at the time. This was 2001, 02, 03, somewhere back in there. So when I got ready to, man, this phone tripping, man. Hold on, there we go. When I got ready to go to the studio, what I would have to do is to unload my drums, he would have to start a track. Track 1 drums. I would have to let my drums play. So the song 4 minutes, I had to let my drums play 4 minutes. I had to let the snare play for 4 minutes. The hi-hats, the piano part, the horn part, whatever I had in there. So you're looking at 9, 10 tracks. That's 40 minutes already gone from your time just tracking the beat. Then you listen to the beat, getting the beat how you want it. Be like, okay, I like that. Then you have to start the recording process. Because sometimes I would go in the studio, I would dump $150, $200 because I wanted to go ahead and the longest part was putting the beats on the computer. Because once I do a song 15, 20 minutes, I'm pretty much one take. So 15, 20 minutes, I'm through with the song, and the rest of the time just him mixing it, and I take it home, see if I like it or whatever. So that's what I'm saying about when you go to the studio and you're paying your money, man, be prepared. You know, I don't know, I see a lot of guys using YouTube beats, but if you got a producer making beats for you and he track it out, nowadays it's easy. They could just take your hard drive, transfer all the beats on the computer program if they're using whatever they're using. They can just put the your tracks on the computer, and then you go ahead and start recording. It don't take nothing 5 minutes to load it up and listen, see how it sounds. But back then, I appreciate me, you know, having the know-how to how to record myself now, because back then, man, I used to have to spend money. And so if you out there spending money, you got a budget on your studio time, man. Just be prepared when you go to the studio. But we're going to pause for a cause, and I'll be right back. Yeah.
Dramatic Minds Entertainment presents Pray for Mercy Volume 1, the singles collection, featuring the hit song, Tonight.
When I'm just living up on this liquor, trying to get my head right. In the hood, stacking up this paper, trying to get my bread right. I got a cup full of ice, just mix this Crown with this Sprite, and just get yourself together, cause I'ma love you tonight.
And also, I Got That, featuring H2 Music.
I got that bass up in my ride, them lows missing them highs, they're loud burning inside. So won't you hop up inside? I got that bass knocking my speakers, them highs up on my tweeters. No time for non-believers. Don't join us.
And the club banger, Legs to the Ceiling.
I'm coming through just to break you off. Give me the green light and I'm going. I got her legs up to the ceiling. Legs up to the ceiling, I got her legs up to the ceiling. Legs up to the ceiling, I got her legs up to the ceiling. Legs up to the ceiling. Oh boy, the good feeling, I got her legs up to the
Available
ceiling.
worldwide online.
Yo, I'm back, man. Like I was saying, man, be prepared when you go to the studio because you will appreciate your music better when you sitting here having to pay for this hour. You're gonna take it a lot more serious when you have to pay $50, $100 an hour versus somebody recording you for free. Because I mean, I really don't like necessarily to record different artists because if I'm doing it for free, they're gonna come around me not knowing what the 12 bars are. They're gonna say, oh man, that ain't how I want it. I want it to sound like this. Oh man, I can't get my hook right. But I guarantee if I'm start charging them, if I be charging $20, $30, $40, $50 an hour, they gonna come here and be prepared because I'm like, man, look, I can record you for 2 hours. You gotta pay a minimum, you know. They're gonna take that music a little more serious and gonna be more prepared if the money is coming out of your pocket, you know. So you gotta know what a 12 bars are. You gotta know that the engineer gotta have time to put your music on the computer. All that is included in the time. Now I have seen some engineers when it's a niche on their end, when they mess up, but their equipment running slow, they say, man, I ain't worrying about these last 30 minutes, man. You know my computer was messing up, man. Just pay me the minimum. We're not worrying about anything that you go over. You know, if it's their fault. But if it's your fault, you don't have your songs ready, you don't have your songs prepared, then you're gonna be out a lot of money that you don't want to spend. So just think about that. So next time you go to the studio, man, you can already be prepared where you won't be losing a lot of money. That's just a little bit of advice that I wanted to share with y'all today, man. I'm telling you, you're gonna appreciate your music a lot more when you having to pay for it with your own money. When you working hard and then you got to come out $200 out your pocket, $300 out your pocket for the studio, you're gonna want everything to go right and you're gonna be prepared. But if, like I said, you got somebody that's going to record you for free and you sit in the studio and you got the luxury of doing that, that's fine. And if somebody recording you for free and you just want to come over and kick it, you're not really going to take it as serious. You're just going to play around, try to come up with some songs. But I'm telling you, man, back in the day, when I went to the studio, I was always prepared. I always had my songs ready. I was ready to go. Once that music was on the computer, I was ready to record. So that's just something to think about, man. Be prepared when you go in the studio, man. Don't be, I'm gonna just freestyle. Hold on, start me over. You ain't gonna do that too much if you paying $50 an hour. I guarantee you, man. So when you start going to the studio, think about that. I already had your songs together, not unless you got the luxury of having your own studio or the luxury of going to a studio for free. But this is the Independent Grind. I am Dramatic Gamble. If y'all want to talk about anything on the show, hit me up on my email at dramaticgamble@gmail.com. So till next time, I'ma holler at y'all. Peace out. Gia.